What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our channel.
I'm Connor.
And I'm Sydney, and you're on the Connor and Sydney channel. If this is your first time here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so we can reach 1,000 subscribers before April.
Today we're reviewing Redeeming Love. It just came out in theaters on Thursday, I think.
Yeah, it technically came out Friday, but they had like early showings of it Thursday, and that just happened to be the night that we wanted to go see a movie. So we're like, oh, it's already out. Let's go ahead and see it. I guess you could tell them why I told you don't watch the trailer.
Oh, just because, well, she said that it seemed like they made the trailer seem kind of graphic, or like it was gonna have explicit scenes or something in it.
Yeah, and so I tried to explain it to him because he was like, well, what's it about? And I said, I'm very confused about something, because it was a book written by Francine Rivers, like I think in the 90s, and a lot of Christians know about this book, but I've never read it. He's never read it. It's never something that we've even, have you ever heard of it?
Nope.
I've never heard of it either. I've heard of it only from the past few weeks. Like every Christian like influencer, YouTuber, even Christian friends like posting on their stories how excited they were for this movie to come out, and they were like posting the trailer for it and saying, finally they're making this into a movie and it's based off of the Bible and blah blah blah. And I watched the trailer and I was like, hold on, I'm so confused, because the trailer like showed scenes that seemed like explicit, and I was like, that does not connect to me with like a biblical movie. So I was really confused, because you're used to seeing like if everybody's like, oh, go see this Christian movie, it's like Fireproof, or what are some of the other ones, like Facing the Giants, Courageous. So I was like, this is not what we're used to seeing, but they say there's reason that the movie is so like intense.
So the summary of this movie is this young girl gets sold to a man who runs a brothel, and she's basically groomed from like the age of 7 or 8 all the way to her like 20s to become this prostitute. And there's this guy named
Michael Hosea. So this is like based off the Bible story in Hosea, of Hosea and Gomer. So Michael Hosea is asking God for a woman that he can spend his life with, and when he goes into town the next day, he sees this woman and he's like, oh, I know this is who God wants me to be with. And the guys are like, that's like the most popular prostitute in town. And he's like, okay, God, that's funny, but I guess we gotta go with it. And so he starts pursuing her from that point and doesn't ask for like anything from this prostitute other than he wants to marry her.
He's like paying to see her at several points in the movie, just to like sit down and talk with her and stuff.
And he's like, please put all your clothes on. I just want to talk. And let me like rescue you from here. So his whole purpose is to like rescue her out of that lifestyle and give her the life that she deserves, or the life that she should have.
Which she was reluctant to.
Yes. Okay, so the big question here is like if Christians should even be watching this, because it is a movie on prostitution, and they tell you ahead of time, they're like, this movie is going to be messy and really intense, and if you've been struggling in this and this area, probably don't see it, because it can bring up a lot of like bad feelings, because this is like one Christian movie that isn't sugarcoating things. It's just diving right in, like, here's the ugly truth. So that's kind of where the controversy comes in. So that's kind of what we can talk about, is like some of the good stuff and some of the bad stuff, and if it's worth seeing despite the things that are in it. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about some of the like negative things. So I fully understand there's going to be like prostitution things in the movie, and there's going to be violence in the movie. There's obviously a lot of abuse, even toward children, and a lot of horrible things that nobody ever wants to see. But that's what makes the movie so powerful, is seeing that there is obviously a redeeming love that all of us have, no matter how ugly our past is. So those are some of the things that I expected, and like alcohol usage and stuff like that. But what bothered me, what I was like still really frustrated by, is that this movie, well, it was written by a Christian, but it was basically given to like secular producers and stuff to make this movie. And they chose the scenes between Michael Hosea and Angel, who's the main character. A lot of times in movies, like, you can assume what's going on because it's brief and it's suggestive. But this, like, you went and got popcorn during one of these scenes, but it shows like movement and woman's top parts just being covered by like a hand, or just by her hair, or if she's like at the side, it's still just her hair covering it. So there's a lot of things that are strategically covered so that you don't see anything, But what bothers me is knowing that the author knows this is going to be a mainly Christian audience coming in to see this. And so it seems like you would know that people are going to be a little bit frustrated by seeing things like this. And you can make the argument that on one side, like, well, they're married. You know, these things are happening when people are married. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, well, you know, all married couples are doing this stuff, but it doesn't mean you have to watch them do it. And like, they could have made it, I think, more brief and suggestive and everybody knows what's happening. But instead, obviously there were like still clothes or something covering things, but they were each, I think they said between 2 and 3 minutes long during those 2 scenes specifically. So like you didn't need like 5 or 6 minutes of very passionate married people love. But I wouldn't say like don't go see this, and I wouldn't say it was a bad movie, because there's a lot of awesome stuff in here, but I wish all that negative stuff wasn't in there. But you can say like some of the things that you liked about the movie.
If you can put some of the negative things aside, it's so most Christian movies have like a really low budget. They're like low budget films or whatever.
Because they're made by like a church or something.
So this one seemed like it had like really high quality actors, and like, yeah, everything just seemed like it was a normal movie that you would go to the movies and see. The acting was, I thought, was really good. Popcorn was great.
So I could have left and been like, I'm just so frustrated about that. Like those few scenes that shouldn't have been in there, that you like don't leave feeling like, oh, that was a Christian movie and I now want to live my life in a better way. But I left that movie feeling inspired to live my life in a better way, because I saw the way that the forgiveness that was given by Michael Hosea when his wife kept doing horrible things. And I was like, oh my goodness, like the Bible says we're supposed to forgive somebody 70 times 7 times, and we're really bad at that. And the world tells us like, just move on, just get rid of this person and move on to the next spouse or whatever. I was like, wow, we all can take some notes from that. And not just that, but it showed the way that God pulled her out of this situation. It wasn't just Michael Hosea that was like, here, I'm gonna save you, and then everything was perfect, but he had to keep letting her go, and she found God on her own. Basically because of Michael's actions, and because he looked different than the rest of the world. And there was no part in the movie where he was yelling at her or pushing her around like every other man in that time was doing to her, but he looked different than the rest of the world. And that was powerful enough that when things got bad enough in her life, she said like, I'm gonna try out this God thing. I'm gonna use my last remaining like straw to reach out to God and see what happens. And he like rescued her out of this situation, and she knew that God was real then. And so that just showed me too that like we need to do a better job at looking different than the world and not reacting the way that the rest of the world will.
So on Rotten Tomatoes, it says like most of the reviews are just saying about how unrealistic it is, and they pretty much tear it apart. But you kind of get the feeling that most of the people on Rotten Tomatoes are probably secular.
So they probably don't know the way that God can love people and pull them out of messy situations. Because to anybody else, it's like, why would he go back to her? Or like, how would God really pull her out of a situation like that? But there are lots of people that once they find God, their life completely turns around. So all that's possible, and that is just the power of God's redeeming love that a lot of people don't understand, and it's not going to look real to them.
But on Avatar, it's got like a 90 or whatever on Rotten Tomatoes because it's totally realistic.
I mean, I guess that's true. Yeah, they don't care about it when it's not anything to do with like Christianity or faith or whatever.
Which it is kind of unreasonable, like this girl repeatedly cheats on her husband.
It just shows that he was obeying the commands of God when God told him to be with this woman no matter what she does to you.
You can expect a little bit of pushback when it's a Christian story.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected good ratings on a Christian movie. I don't think there's ever been like great Hollywood ratings on a Christian movie. It just shows us, even though we may not be doing the things that the main character is doing, we continue going back to a lot of our old sins. And a lot of people get stuck in those patterns and keep going back to it. And in the Bible it says, as a dog returns to its vomit, a fool returns to his folly. And I think we're all guilty of that at some point in our life. And God continues taking us back over and over again. And it doesn't make any sense. And it isn't logical, but it's what he does because his love for us is so big. So it's just a great reminder of that. It left me with enough good things that were able to overpower some of the annoying, stupid things that Hollywood put into the movie that like we may have been frustrated about. But I think there's so much that you can learn from it that it's still worth seeing. Although I think it does take a lot of discernment before you go see the movie on if you're someone who can watch that And like if your husband is, or your boyfriend or whatever is dealing with any sort of like sexual sin or like lust, like don't take him with you. If you're dealing with those things and you think that this is gonna be like a gateway to make you watch movies that have more and more cleavage and that are gonna keep pushing the limits further and further, then don't go see this. Like for us, when these scenes were going on, we would just look at each other, or I'd like put my hand up and be like, okay, like don't need to see any of this. So if you can just kind of turn your eyes away during those parts and just know in your mind that that's stupid and shouldn't be added into the movie to that extent, then I think it's absolutely worth seeing, and there's a lot you can learn from it.
So what would you rate the film as you?
As me, like on how much I liked it? Out of what?
10.
Out of 10 on how much I liked it, I would give it a 10. Hey guys, it's Sydney from the future. I'm just editing the video right now and realized how ridiculous it was that I rated this movie a 10 when I did have a lot of critiques on it. I was just going completely based off of how much I liked the movie. But if I have critiques of it, I'm not going to give it a 10, so I'm going to give it a 9, because it's not a movie that I can suggest to all my friends, because I don't think it's appropriate for everybody. And I think it's kind of like a case-by-case thing where some people it works to go see it and some people it doesn't, but I think it's encouraging to everybody. But if it still has parts in it that make me really frustrated, then I'm not gonna rate it a 10. Like, that's ridiculous. I just obviously really enjoyed the movie and the message. Also, I've heard recently from some people that read the book that the reason these sexual scenes were in the movie, or why the author even wrote them into the book, was not because Hollywood was just trying to get more viewers or something, but instead it was to show the contrast between sexual intimacy in a marriage with a man who loved God and wanted to make her and her body feel respected, rather than all the men who she had sexual encounters with before, who were very abusive and who didn't really want anything to do with her and weren't loving her and respecting her. And so I think they're trying to say that they showed those scenes to the extent that they did to show that Angel was noticing how beautiful sex can be, and that the purpose of it is to be beautiful in marriage. And so they wanted to like show how differently she was treated, and so that she would understand that sex is something beautiful made by God in the context of marriage. So they were just like trying to show the opposing views. I'm not really sure that that gives us any excuse to watch them do these things, so I'm not sure that it needed to be in there regardless, but it did give me a new perspective. If you have read the book, write in the comments below if that's why you think they put this in the movie. It does make more sense to me. However, I don't know if that really gives us an excuse to watch scenes like that anyway. Now back to the show. What would you give it?
As a guy, and you're gonna take your girlfriend or your wife, I would say it's like an 8. She's gonna love it.
Yeah.
She'll probably really like it, and you're gonna be like, I wish there was more like shooting.
But for him, that's saying a lot, because if I took him to see any other chick flick, he would give it like literally a 2.
I've fallen asleep in the movie theaters before.
Yeah. So I was impressed that he seemed like into it, and at the end he was like, wow, that was a really good movie.
It has a good storyline, and like it keeps you captivated the whole time. There's not like a ton of time where it's just like wasted. It's not like slow.
Yeah, it keeps rolling the whole time. And at the end, it's one of those things, like, don't want to spoil anything, but it's like a very powerful ending where Connor is like, he doesn't get emotional during stuff, but he was like, that had me feeling some type of way at the end. It leaves you at the end with like a really high likability factor for me. But if you're going based off of like how Christians should rate the movies, like, should you take your small group there? Should you take your pastor there? Maybe go see it with a group of girls. If your husband is in a good place, you can take him, but it's really good to warn people ahead of time what they should be expecting. It's not like other Christian movies, and it's not just your sweet traditional love story. It's gonna be pretty intense. So take that as you will. If you think that you're good enough to go see it, then I would say definitely do. I know we're not movie critics by any means, so don't take this as anything besides just us saying our opinions as Christians on this movie.
If you've already seen this, comment down below what you would rate it and if you think that it's appropriate for other Christians to see.
Like we said already, please subscribe to our channel. Trying to reach 1,000 subscribers over here, so help us out. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and remember that what God thinks about you is way more important than what the world thinks about you. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.